And welcome to episode 105 of the Talking Friars podcast. Ben Fadden, your host here. Thanks for joining on YouTube or Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you're listening or watching to this episode. I appreciate it. Let's get to the topic for today. Should the Padres be interested in Austin Meadows? It was reported by Mark Topkin of the Tampa Bay Times, according to MLBTradeRumors.com, that Austin Meadows, outfielder for the Tampa Bay Rays, could be available in trade along with Kevin Kiermaier. Topkins said, quote, most likely to go into trade, end quote, is Meadows or Kiermaier. Kiermaier is the center fielder for the Rays. He's obviously not really as much of an option, I think, logically, as Austin Meadows would be. Kiermaier is a center fielder. Like I just mentioned, his contract is pretty expensive. He's a glove-first center fielder, which the Padres already went through with Manuel Margot. They already have a Gold Glove center fielder in Trent Grisham, so he doesn't really seem like a fit. What they need is a corner outfielder, a DH. That's kind of what Austin Meadows can do. Meadows can play left. He can play right field. He can DH as well. I'm sure he could probably play center if they, had to put him out there. He was a top prospect in the Pittsburgh system before he was sent over to Tampa Bay in the Chris Archer deal. He had a down 2020 season, but then bounced back in 2021. So when this lockout is over, obviously we don't know when that is. You can look at episode 104, listen or watch that to hear my thoughts on the most recent CBA reports that have come out. It doesn't seem like those discussions are going well, and so we just don't know when that lockout is going to end. But when it does end, AJ Preller is going to have some work to do in terms of getting a DH, getting some outfield help. So it is a question to ask now that it seems like Meadows could be a candidate that will be traded after the lockout. Should he fit on the Padres, or should the Padres just go after him? I think that they should, if things don't go well or the way that they plan on them going in the Castellanos, the Chris Bryant, the Seiya Suzuki sweepstakes, Nelson Cruz, those sweepstakes. You'd think that they'd bring back Tommy Pham to be a fourth outfielder. So as it pertains to if the Padres should try to target and trade for Austin Meadows, they should be doing it if they want him to be the third outfielder, if they want him to be that left fielder or right fielder, not if they want him to be the fourth outfielder. I don't know if you want to do that when you can just use like Nomar Mazara, who you signed to a minor league contract, or someone else who might be more of a bat first outfielder, than give up prospect capital for an Austin Meadows deal. So I'm going under the assumption that they'd want to do this as a starting outfield role for Meadows, and I think that I think that they should consider it and have conversations with the Rays about it, but it should not be their first, second, or third option, and I'll get into why. But first, like I mentioned, he can play left, center. He's 27 years old, so still probably like right in the middle of his prime. Good thing about him, the positives, he has 3 years of control left. Like I mentioned, he's under 30. He's only owed $4 million according to Spot Track in 2022. And then he has arbitration the rest of his, those next 2 years, 2023, 2024. So it doesn't seem like he'd be too expensive. He is coming off a pretty good year after a down 2020 season. The concerns, so those are kind of the positives. He had 27 home runs, I believe, in 2021. He's projected, according to Baseball Reference, to hit another 20-plus home runs in 2022. So he does provide more pop than someone like Tommy Pham or like Will Myers, who hit like 17 home runs last year. But with that said, when you look at the trends for him, he's more of like a streaky hitter. That kind of starts my concerns for Meadows, which I'll get into now. Getting to that streaky part, I mentioned that he hit 27 home runs last year. 10 of those home runs that he hit were like in a 1 month stretch, like in the middle of the season between the beginning of May and the start of June. So he got really hot during that month, and maybe that'll be good for the Padres if he does become a Padre and he gets hot like that. But do remember that Tommy Pham last year, if I remember correctly, he did start off bad and then he got hot for like a month, and Padre fans, me included, were like, "Oh wow, this is the Tommy Pham that we wanted, and that's why we gave up Renfroe." And then he kind of went back down to being Tommy Pham and struggled a little bit with that, kind of like he did the majority of his Padres tenure. Now we don't know if that tenure will continue after the lockout's over and they decide to bring him back on a 1-year deal or whatever. He has said that he's open to that. So my point there with the streakiness is I think the Padres should be going after obviously Castellanos or Bryant or Suzuki, someone who seems like they'd be more consistent than Meadows, has been. Someone with a cleaner injury history, just more of a pure outfielder. He made contact, Meadows did, in 2021 on less than 38% of the balls that were put in play by Meadows. So 38% of his in-play bats or plays that he made contact with, 38%, less than 38% of those were considered hard hit. So in terms of the power, which is what the Padres need, you'd like someone that hits the ball harder, more frequently than Meadows, at least than what he did last year. So that's kind of a reason of concern to add to the streakiness. And another big thing, I know that this isn't like concrete stats, but I would be concerned that the team that the Padres are dealing with here, they are dealing with the Tampa Bay Rays. And the Tampa Bay Rays do have a history of getting rid of guys and just bringing up their minor league talent or signing guys to 1 or 2 year deals that end up working out really well. And so with the Rays, they get rid of guys before they really hit that downslope. This is the team, let me remind you, that got rid of Chris Archer, who was one of the best kind of like young pitchers in the game. And then he ended up falling off a cliff in Pittsburgh. This is the same Rays team that in that trade, they got back Austin Meadows, who ended up having great years with the Rays and helping them go to the playoffs. So they make deals at the right time. And yes, Padres got Jake Cronenworth, and it seems like they've won that trade because of what Jake Cronenworth is, all-star infielder. And even though it was supposed to be the Tommy Pham trade for the Padres, they still got Jake Cronenworth back, and Cronenworth is an all-star and a top 3 hitter on their team now, on the Padres team. So it seems like while they won that deal, the main player that the Padres were supposed to get back that was supposed to impact their team the most was Pham, and he didn't really do that. That didn't really happen. So for the Rays point of view, in terms of Tommy Pham being the most notable player going to the Padres and them getting rid of him, they won that aspect of the trade. So they're a smart team. Eric Neander, president of baseball ops there. They've seen, Chaim Bloom went to the Red Sox. They've had a lot of assistants go elsewhere. James Click went to Houston. So they're a smart front office. This is the same organization, that has, they let go of Blake Snell, and Blake Snell had a up and down season with the Padres last year. They traded Emilio Pagan. That hasn't really quite worked out like the Padres envisioned. Again, there's still an opportunity for that to improve, but that hasn't really worked out as planned. What other trades? There's other trades that come to mind. Evan Longoria is another deal, that comes off my head. Him being traded to the San Francisco Giants, and then the San Francisco Giants, that deal hasn't really worked out great for them. Longoria hasn't really stayed healthy. He had a pretty good year last year. He was part of that playoff team that exceeded expectations, but at the same time, he hasn't been the player that he was with Tampa in his prime. So that's another deal. Like I mentioned, FAM. So my point is, I'd be really, 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 really careful with who I'd be dealing with here in this trade. Tampa is smart. They're probably the smartest with the Dodgers, the smartest front offices in the league. And so if they're willing and most likely to trade Meadows, there has to be a reason why. They're not going to trade him. Like, you're not seeing them looking to trade Randy Rosarena, right? Or a Wander Franco. I know they just signed him to an extension, but let's say a Rosarena. They're not looking to trade him. So they're expecting that his performance is going to keep improving and getting better. But they're looking to part with Meadows when he still has 3 years left to control. So maybe they're seeing, with the hard contact rate hard hit rate going down, the batting average hasn't been high. It was like less than 250, which isn't rare, nowadays, but you still would like the average to be higher. Seeing those numbers, those trends going down a little bit. I think he's had an oblique injury. So they're seeing things, I think, that other organizations might not be too closely looking at. So I would be careful at, dealing with them, and that would be a concern for me. So those are the concerns. There are positives, the power numbers. He's an okay defender. But in terms of the Padres' interest level, I don't think that it would be smart for them to have Meadows at the top of their list in outfield candidates to go after. Because one, I don't think they should be making a trade for an outfielder. I think it should be in free agency because they shouldn't be trying to even give up any of their top prospects. He's not a prospect you give up Mackenzie Gore for example, or even Campusano, for example. I like the fact that he can DH, but I think if you're going to use him, if you're going to acquire him, he's not going to be your DH. He should be in a position where he's playing the outfield. The DH for the Padres, at least next year, I think should be a Nelson Cruz. I know I'm not going on a limb when I'm saying that, but it should be someone that has more power. I think someone that can hit more like 30 home runs, someone that is more strictly a DH, and you use that last outfield position on someone that can have power, ideally can have power, and is a pretty good outfielder. Suzuki's one of those guys. Bryant's one of those guys, in my opinion. I'd be more interested in those two guys than Castellanos. Maybe Castellanos a little bit in front of Suzuki, but Bryant would be my number one because of his versatility as well. He can also DH if that's an option that you want to go down that road. So I think Meadows is an option, but I don't think they should be doing trades for outfielders. I think having a 1-year deal to bring back FAM could work. Seeing what Nomar Mazara can do in spring training, however long that will be. Manfred thinks it should be 4 weeks. He's a minor league invite, so maybe see if you have some lightning in a bottle there. He has had some power history. Average isn't his thing, but it's kind of like Meadows. Power has been there. So we'll see about him. I think free agency is the route to go, though. So answering the question, should the Padres have interest in Meadows? Yes, but as a backup to the backup plan, if that makes sense. So give us your take, social media at Talking Friars, in the comment section on YouTube. Thank you for listening and watching. This was a short episode. We'll come back. I have an interview scheduled with a former Padre this week, so stay tuned for that. Shorter episode. Isn't a whole lot to talk about right now because it's a lockout, but I did want to just bring this option up and kind of create some talk about if you're interested in Meadows or not. Thanks for listening and watching. I'll keep you updated on the CBA lockout stuff. Hope you're enjoying. Thank you so much for listening and watching. Till next time, let's go Padres. Have a good one. See ya.